Today we'll study 18th century major characteristics of the age, problem of refining and fixing the language. When we are going to understand any age for the study of language and its literary qualities, we should understand its historical situations and political scenario. We'll talk about some historical upheavals. French Revolution, which started from France, and it broke the power of aristocracy and royal family, and many people from elite class were killed, and power of middle class ruled. And this French Revolution continued from 1789 to 1799. Then there is a second major changes, American Revolution, where American patriots defeated 13 British colonies with the help of French forces. In this way, America got freedom. When America got freedom, this was the starting point of freedom all over the world, and colonialism started to decline with the passage of time. Industrial Revolution has also brought major changes. Industrial Revolution started from 1760 to 1840. Previously, economy was agro-based, and people were living in the villages, and their life was rustic, and they were very close to nature. But suddenly, people shifted their interest to machines. While they were focusing on machines, they themselves became machines. You are looking at two pictures. At the left side there is a French Revolution picture in which people from elite class and those who have consumed national income and national benefits, they were killed. And on the right side you see a quotation, "If there must be trouble, let it be in my day, that my child may have peace." This is relevant to American Revolution, that if there is change and there are sufferings to be borne, so we are ready to bear those sufferings, and our children should be free from these sufferings, and they should live life in freedom and liberty. Now we'll see some literary influences. There is Age of Enlightenment, or you can call it Age of Sensibility. Age of Enlightenment means there is Age of Reason, there is Age of critical thinking, and worldly benefits were being emphasized. And neoclassicism, that classicism was started to be changed, and romanticism movement also started in the 18th century. And Byron, Shelley, and Wordsworth, Keats, they are the torchbearers of romanticism. And symbolism movement, that one thing stands for the others. Suppose the writer is talking about a smoke screen. Physically, the writer is not talking about smoke screen, Basically, the writer is talking about generation gap or the situation in which a person is unable to understand or to see the real picture of one person. So, when they started to use symbolism, they considered it that there is depth and their writing is full of enlightenment, reasoning, and knowledge. Realism was also focused. Realism means real pictures, real societal issues should be raised. Here, you look at the picture at the bottom. This in here you see that in the age of enlightenment, people are discussing different issues. People are talking. Information is being emphasized. Knowledge, information got supremacy over literature. In early 18th century, the church influence and churchgoers declined. People started to give less importance to religion and more importance to reasoning and knowledge. The Church of England got power in the end of 18th century. Then people resorted to religion and they started to study religion. They started to go to Sunday services. In this phase, charity schools were established and boys joined grammar schools and girls also joined schools, but their focus was not on science, invention, or discoveries. Rather, their focus was on music and embroidery. That girls should get ready for homely activities and they should be able to knit and sew some things and they should be good in music. Religious controversy between Roman Catholics and Protestants continued, and the Protestants were not allowed to join Church of England schools. So here you find that there is controversy, that Roman Catholics were ruling and they were holding these schools and they did not permit Protestants to study in these schools. And in their music, uh, they followed nature, supernatural, and dreamy themes. And humanism was at its top, that the universe has been created for human beings, so humans should be given more impetus, more emphasis. Goths, who are Goths? Goths is a barbaric tribe, and Goths and Vandals, these two tribes caused a decline of Roman Empire. In the beginning of Roman Empire, Goths were pushed to go at the corners of the state and they were kept away. But later on they got power, they started to attack Roman Empire and they weakened it and afterwards they occupied it. So influence of Gothic literature is present on English literature. Frankenstein is a novel which was written by Mary Shelley and it is generally categorized as Gothic novel, a genre of fiction that uses gloomy settings and supernatural events to create an atmosphere of mystery and terror. Frankenstein is a novel which creates fear, and fear is usually created by that situation with which a human being is not accustomed or is not very good or is not familiar with that situation. So unknown things create fear in human beings. Poets of 18th century. Writers are very sensitive. They are able to see the society. They have their hand on the pulse of the nation, and they perceive and they absorb national situations, and their writings also reflect their own thoughts as well as their national situations. Uh, One major figure is Lord Byron. He was a leading figure of the Romantic movement. His specific ideas about life and nature benefited the world of literature. His blank verse, elusive imagery, heroic couplets, and complex structures won fame. You are familiar with Shakespeare. Shakespeare also follow blank verse. Next we'll talk about another poet, William Blake. William Blake is a mystic poet. He's a Sufi poet. His writing is full of purity of heart, love of humanity, and human beings should not be poisonous. He has written a poem, Poison Tree. The basic focus of the poem is that if you are angry with your friend, you open your heart and you express all your emotions and feelings, and your anger has come to an end. But if you are angry with some of your enemy or some other person, then you nurture that, you sow a seed of hatred. Then you water this plant, and with the passage of time, it becomes a tree. Then it brings forth a fruit, and this fruit is so poisonous that one person has eaten it and the person is found dead. So he is of the opinion that human beings should express, they should discuss, and they should try to resolve their problems, issues, angers. And William Blake writes, I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow. P.B. Shelley. P.B. Shelley has written a poem, Ozymandias. In Ozymandias, first of all, he mentions the grandeur and fame of that king. But the king was so much arrogant. Later on, the king met his decline as pride hath a fall. So his statue was erected. Then he describes that the statue was fallen down. But even then, expressions of anger have been printed on the face of the statue. Another major point is that prose was dominant in 18th century. Clubs and coffee houses also contributed in the production of prose. Political writing was also very common. That writing was for the criticism of politics or for the reformation of political process. New moral values were being introduced at that time. Some new publishing houses were also introduced. When new publishing houses are in the market, they nurture and produce some new ideas. Periodical essays were written on the topics of morality, education, and entertainment. Morality, moral values, they were highlighted in periodical essays. Periodical essays means they were written after some particular periods. Like they can be written monthly, they can be written quarterly. So those essays focused on education of human beings, education and re-education of man. It means moral values of human beings, which and those qualities make a person human being. And different types of moral values were taught in these essays. Now we'll talk about some other famous literary figures. One is Alexander Pope, Rape of the Lock, a mock epic. First of all, epic is heroic poetry which has a sublime theme. But this is mock epic. Mock epic means here epic has been presented as a funny thing. In Rape of the Lock, lock means here Belinda is the central figure of this mock epic, and Belinda's hair locks were cut by some supernatural machinery, and in this way this was just a trivial issue, a minor issue of cutting the lock. Lock means hair, but it has been given a heroic stature, but this is just a criticism. Jane Austen, you must have read her novels. She has written 6 major novels, and her focus is on homely matters. And you must be familiar with Pride and Prejudice. Over there, the major issue was of wedding of daughters, and how are different marriages executed, like Lydia eloped, and there was Darcy and some other characters who were rich and they were in need of marriage. There is Jonathan Swift. Jonathan Swift was an Anglo-Irish satirist, essayist, political pamphleteer, poet, and cleric who became Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral. Jonathan Swift was declared as a misanthropist who used to hate human beings, and he has also written Gulliver's Travels. Apparently, they look like some travelogues, and they were written for children, because such states like Lilliput states and human beings of 6 inches were found over there. Basically, in those days, writers were not allowed to write against the government. So he took this strategy to write for the children, but in heart, he was criticizing the government and its acts. When he says that human beings are of 6 inches, he shows the moral values of human beings, that their real height is of just 6 inches. So he talks about them. Then he also discusses uh, that horses, they were very wise, but human beings were not wise. It means he is preferring animals to human beings. That human beings have lost sense and sensibility, wisdom, reasoning, while animals have these uh, qualities of reasoning, wisdom, rationality. Our next part is problem of refining and fixing the language. The major issue of that time was standardization of language issue. That which language is standard. Suppose many people were writing, and but whose language is the standard language? And the commoners, or especially non-native speakers, they were so much confused. So how can language be standardized? There should was the greatest need of dictionary and grammar. Dictionary and grammar are most powerful ways to standardize the language. Suppose a dictionary is present, all people are following that dictionary, those spellings and their usages, so that language is the standard language. Grammar is consisting of a set of rules. So if a person follows the rules of grammar, it means the language is a standard language. In this way, purity of language should be achieved. There were different types of mixtures. Basically, non-native speakers, they were also writing, and people uh, having the Latin and Greek background, they were also writing in English language, and Greek and Latin was declared as the language of scholars. Nobody can claim to be a scholar without the knowledge of Greek and Latin. So when they were writing, they extensively used Greek and Latin language. So there was also Norman conquest, and France occupied England for 200 years, and these 200 years entirely changed the structure of English language. And the French dominated, and the French laws, French newspapers, French theaters, French schools, French ecclesiastical society, means church, missionaries, parsons, and even French wives were present in English society. The result was complete metamorphosis of English language. So English was having French imprint on it. There was a need of purity of language. Variety of language was seen as negative. In that period, uh, there was need of some uniformity. So there was a negative taste of modern expressions. Those who were seniors, those who were old, they did not accept the variety. They considered those modern expressions as negative expressions. Biases and subjectivity was also dominating. French deformation of English language, that France has changed the structure of English language. And you also know that France and England hated each other. So French English rivalry is also present. And this is still going on, that they don't like language of each other. In 18th century, colonialism and its linguistic effects are also very dominating. As we were saying that language is not pure. What are its causes? One major cause was colonialism and its linguistic effects. Native English language learned different words from different languages because they colonized almost all parts of the world. England colonized the Pak subcontinent, China, Australia, uh, different countries of Africa, 13 states of America. So English borrowed vocabulary from all parts of the world. So English has cosmopolitan vocabulary. Native English has learned vocabulary from Native Americans, and those words are mucation and skunk. They also took words from Spanish and Portuguese, chili, chocolate, tomato. They borrowed words barbecue, canoe, hurricane, potato, tobacco from Cuba and West Indies. English borrowed words bungalow, Kashmiri, curry, jungle from India. English borrowed words from Africa. Those African words are banana, gorilla, zebra. English also took words from Australia and especially kangaroo, because kangaroo is only present in Australia. If you have any question, feel free to ask, and you can send your questions on Google Classroom, and I'll answer your queries, or we can have some other online session, live session, and we can talk on it. Thank you so much.